Hello everyone. I hope this video finds you well and staying safe. Greetings. For those of you who don't know me already, my name is Erin Schalk and I'm the artist in residence for the Muckenthaler Cultural Center in 2021. I'll be providing the audio narration today for this instructional video workshop. And to begin, I do want to note that this project is the brainchild of Marcia Judd, lecturer in art at Cal State Fullerton, as well as a teaching artist at the Muckenthaler Cultural Center, aka the Muck. Marcia had the amazing idea to make tactile crocheted ropes that will be temporarily installed in the Muck's gardens, sectioning off a variety of areas in the gardens. These aren't just ordinary ropes, however. These are handmade works of fiber art. When the project is complete, we'll collectively have over 1,700 feet of tactile rope that will become a fiber art installation in the gardens. So why tactile ropes, and why rope off the gardens at all? Part of the work I'm doing this year as the Muck's artist in residence is to help provide increased accessibility and opportunities for individuals with blindness or visual impairments. These tactile ropes can serve as what's called an O&M tool, and O&M stands for Orientation and Mobility. And this serves as a guide to assist visitors with vision loss as they safely navigate the Muck's gardens. So an O&M tool you might be familiar with already is, say, a white cane that helps someone with vision loss navigate their way around an area, whether it's an intersection, a room, that kind of thing. And these tactile ropes are going to help with navigating around the Muck's gardens. In this video workshop, we'll learn: Number 1, a brief introduction to the history and functions of fibers. Number 2, gain a better understanding of fiber art as a visual arts discipline. And number 3, learn techniques for creating tactile ropes at home. So I hope you're ready to give this a try. All you need is some yarn, your hands and fingers, and a bit of patience. So let's get started. First of all, fibers and fabrics have been part of human civilizations for countless centuries. Of course, people need clothes to wear and to keep warm, depending on what part of the world you live in. We'll discuss a handful of fibers, including their origins, how they are processed, and typical uses. Now, you may have heard of jute before. If you haven't, chances are you have touched it before. Jute is a relatively strong, coarse fiber. It's light tan in color. Now, if you've ever touched or used coarse burlap fabric before, this is typically made of woven jute strands. Jute's strength, its toughness, means it's a highly versatile fiber, especially for everyday use. In addition to cords, rope, and burlap, jute is often used in fabrics for packaging. Things like sacks, bags, think agriculture, think industrial sort of products. You can think of feed or grain sacks on a farm and how these are often made with burlap and woven jute. Jute's history is rich and far-reaching. It has been grown in India's Bengal region, and if you're not familiar, the Bengal region is located in the northeast of the country since antiquity. India's jute processing industry began taking off in the 1850s in particular, and India has a rich history of fibers, spinning, and weaving. You may have heard, for example, of sari silks in India. Jute production changed during India's partition in 1947, and this is when the country was split to form both the countries of India and Pakistan. And much jute production is concentrated in East Pakistan. Jute is also primarily grown in Brazil and China, so it's not concentrated in India alone, but for many, many, many years, India, of course, was the center of jute production. Now, for our garden rope project, jute provides us with strength and heft to our fibers. Since the ropes that we'll be creating together will be exposed to the elements, in time, the sun, wind, rain, etc., will begin to break the fibers down. However, we can count on jute to be one of the fibers that lasts the longest, no matter what the weather decides to throw at it. Now, let's talk a little bit about yarn and the process of spinning fibers into yarn. Prior to machine-spun yarn, artisans would take raw fiber, for example, wool from sheep, card it, And what that means is it's a process of combing those fibers to remove the debris, such as dirt and leaves that may have gotten caught in, say, the sheep's wool, or if you're using, say, fibers from an alpaca, llama, something like that, getting rid of all that dust, dirt, and debris. That's one of the functions of carding. But then also what carding does is it basically combs all the fibers into the same direction. And for anyone who has tried to spin before, you want all of your fibers running in the same direction. If they're crisscrossing on each other, anything like that, it causes a lot of problems. But once you have them all running, say, in the same horizontal direction, it becomes much easier to spin the fibers into strands of yarn using what's called either a drop spindle or a spinning wheel. Now, most people are familiar with a spinning wheel. We have stories like Sleeping Beauty and Rapunzel to thank for this. But if you're not familiar with the drop spindle, let me explain what that is. Easier to carry with you than, say, a large spinning wheel. A drop spindle is maybe at most a foot long, so you can easily store it in a purse or a bag. A drop spindle typically has a stem or wooden dowel that runs vertically, at least the way that you hold it. And there's usually a circle or disc of some kind that's placed on top of the dowel horizontally, so you can think about it as a T. And this circle, I've seen everything from circles that are made of, say, a disc of wood to ones that are made of a piece of stone, even a piece of turquoise. And so once you have this T shape, this drop spindle T shape, usually there's also a hook at the very top of that spindle. And this hook is placed there to catch the fiber and the spun yarn. And as you spin yarn, whether you're using a drop spindle or a spinning wheel, spun yarns may be a single ply. This is typically one strand of spun fiber. They can be a 2-ply or a double ply. This, of course, logic would dictate that this is 2 strands spun together. 3-ply, 4-ply, and more. Now, even though I'm providing you with information about the history of, say, spinning, we're not actually going to be spinning fibers for this project unless it's something you happen to already know how to do and you want to give that a try. By all means, go for it. But for the vast majority of us, we'll be working with yarns and jute that have already been produced. Now, just for a little bit more backstory, a little bit more history. Spinning wheels were likely first invented in India between 500 and 1000 AD. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, there's such a strong fiber art and textile tradition within India. And it wasn't until the 17th century when spinning wheels became a common household item in North America. And like many of us have learned, I'm sure, in the past, women were typically put in charge of spinning as one of many domestic tasks. Spinning, crocheting, knitting, sewing, all of those different types of fiber arts. In fact, for a time, there were what was called spinning bees. You can think of a spelling bee, but this was a spinning bee, and it was a common social event where women would get together and spin with friends. And often prizes and bragging rights were at stake for those who could produce the most or the highest quality yarns. Now, needless to say, fiber production was forever changed worldwide due to the Industrial Revolution. Suddenly, machines and textile mills could spin and weave fabrics much faster than individual humans could. The unfortunate result of this, although it did produce more cloth in many cases, that was a benefit, but one of the downsides is many different types of fiber traditions were lost in the process. That history of handing down those skills from family to family, from generation to generation, some of that was lost along the way. Now, we often think of fibers as functional objects, and typically they are. Clothing to wear, blankets to keep us warm. Yet fiber art is a complete discipline all its own when it comes to the visual arts. The history of fiber art could be a full online workshop and video lesson in and of itself, but for today, I'll focus on one example where fiber collided with art, an ancient example that takes us to Japan. Some of the most ancient pottery archaeologists ever discovered was Japanese jomon ware, which dates back to 10,500 BC. Jomon, the term jomon, translated from Japanese, means cord or rope pattern. Ancient ceramic artists in Japan would actually take pieces of cord or rope and press them into the soft clay to create tactile patterns on the vessel's surfaces. Think surface decoration. Now, Even today in the 21st century, more and more individuals of all ages are revisiting handmade fiber traditions. Everything from knitting and crocheting to loom weaving to shearing the sheep, and spinning. My argument is this, and you can decide whether or not you agree, that there is an innate human drive, regardless of century or geographic location, to enjoy the sheer pleasure and satisfaction of making something with your hands, to see the concrete, tactile fruits of your labor. So that's what we're going to do next. So please do get your yarn. You can use a crochet hook or knitting needles if you have them, but if you don't, your hands and fingers will be just fine. And in the next portion of the lesson, I'm going to teach you some of the basics of how to begin chaining your own tactile rope for this garden rope workshop project.